Built by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro Percent, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE.
Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 361, sponsored by AmWager. Go to amwager.com to see all the promotions, including the upcoming 0% takeout on win bets on the Preakness Stakes and all other races at Laurel on Saturday. That's right, 0% takeout. So you can get a better takeout than the team if you go to amwager.com and make your win bets there this Saturday. If you don't have an AmWager account yet and you can get one, this might be a good time to do it. As always, I welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. And this week I am joined by special guest Craig Milkowski, developer of the speed and pace figures used in Timeform US past performances. And we are going to have a detailed discussion about races 9 through 13, which includes the Preakness Stakes from Laurel on Saturday. We'll focus on finding and exploiting value. We'll talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hi, Craig. How's it going?
It's going great, Chris. Good to be here, though I have to warn you, you're really pushing the envelope having me back on in 2 weeks. I'm just not used to having that kind of turnaround anymore after a big race.
I figured, that you could gut it out. And since I knew that Bill Mott wasn't your manager, I thought maybe I could get you to come back on short rest. And so I know you're really digging deep, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all.
I had you on the Derby preview. How was your Derby weekend?
It went really well. I had a good Oaks. Did cash a few tickets in the Derby. Nothing life-changing, unfortunately, but with a push from my wife, we had said some good things about the winner, Golden Tempo, and she kind of pushed me over the edge to at least have some money on that one with the female trainer factor. So it was a good weekend in general, and just even a betting part aside, what a great race that was.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say we nailed it, but if I had known, we talked about if it's a pace meltdown, you want horses from the outside that are just going to drop to the back, save ground, and then make a clean run. And we talked about Golden Tempo being exactly that kind of horse that would really appreciate that kind of setup. I didn't think he would get that setup. I was wrong about that to some extent. And but certainly I liked that horse to hit the board. And we also really liked Full Effort, who scratched. I think if he had gone in the race, he probably would have made a good accounting of himself. And, we didn't talk about Ocelli, but I'm sure if we had known he was going to draw in, we would have had similar things to say about him as, potential horse that could just drop right out of it and make a run late. So, and we also talked about how Renegade being down inside wasn't going to get that ideal trip. He was going to feel the pressure. He's probably going to have some traffic. He might be good enough to overcome it. He might not. So, I was very high on Further Ado, but after the first two jumps out of the gate, when six speed, shot off to the right and kind of wiped him out, and he got shuffled back, I knew it wasn't going to be his day. But overall, I thought our analysis was pretty good. And coming out of that race, is there anybody you like?
I mean, I obviously like the Japanese horse, Denom Bourbon, but unfortunately, we got the news he won't be running anytime soon. I was hoping we get a couple horses show up in the Preakness like Further Ado, but unfortunately, we just don't get those kind anymore. I mean, it seems kind of silly to me to pass up a race where he very likely would have been the odds-on favorite, or at least 7-5, 8-5 in a Grade 1 huge purse race. But that just doesn't seem to be enough to entice trainers to run their horses back this quickly anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's kind of strange, but yeah, I think any of those favorites from the Derby, if they had run in the Preakness, would have been strong favorites. Even the thing that surprised me the most was that Baffert didn't run his horse back, so he must not have come out of that race very well, because Baffert doesn't, mind running him back in 2 weeks. He has a lot of success running in the Preakness, so that was one I thought would be the odds-on favorite going into this race was Crude Velocity, but he's not coming. And I think maybe they're a little bit worried about the distance limitation with that horse too, but. That was a relief to see he didn't go, because, I love making Preakness future pool wagers, and I again this year it wasn't as lucrative as it has been, certainly as it was when it first started, but still I got really good value on horses that I knew were going to be 4 or 5 to 1 at post time. I'm getting 20, 25 to 1 on them, so I was hoping none of the horses from the Derby would come back, but. Incredibolt and Ocelli, we'll talk about that. Those horses I don't have in the Preakness future, so I'll be cheering against them. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of the gems I read about in your book.
Yes.
The Preakness future bet, and everybody latches onto the Derby horses when they're almost never going to run back anymore.
Yeah, I always thought it was hilarious that Chief Wallaby was like 15 to 1, and he should have been 1,015 to 1 given his trainer to win the Preakness, So, but you get a lot of dead money like that in that. It was crazy good the first year they had it. They had all the Derby favorites, it was like odds on, 2 to 1, even money, 3 to 1. I can't remember who they were, but and you were getting like 40 and 50 to 1 on the horses that were targeting the Preakness, that were probably going to be one of the favorites because none of the Derby horses were going to run back. And I just killed it those first few years. Fortunately, the horses running back from the Derby haven't been winning recently. So anyway, but you did bring up the book, so it gives me a chance to plug it. That I did have a deep dive on Preakness future, and if you had read the book. If you've read the book, hopefully you got some of those bets down, and you're sitting on some value heading into the Preakness in the future pool, because there was a lot of value in there again this year. If you haven't read the book, I encourage you to get it. Go to betwiththebestmedia.com, and you can get the book. And there's a lot more in it than just the Preakness future, but hopefully that little deep dive I did will more than pay for the book for a lot of people this year. If Incredibolt or Ocelli don't win, then there's probably a good chance that some of the people out there that read that section and took it to heart and made some Preakness future plays will be able to cash a good ticket. So let's hope that happens. We'll talk about that race some more. Before we do, I do want to cover the betting menu at Laurel. They have one I call player-friendly wager. That's their pick 5. It's 12% takeout, which is about the lowest. I think there might be 10% out there, but 12% is about as good as you'll find at a major track for the pick 5. So that is their one player-friendly takeout pool. All the others are kind of at or above the median. They have, a terrible 20-cent jackpot pick 6. You want to avoid that. And unfortunately, CAW teams, they have full access to all the pools, and they take advantage of that. So you got to keep that in mind. You do have the chance to go 0% takeout win bets if through AmWager, so that might be a way you want to focus. But other than the pick 5, make sure you pick your spots. And I get it. We all want to play the Preakness, so I'll be playing it. But as I said last week, I really encourage you, if you actually want to make money at this game and you want this game to continue to be playable for retail players, you got to really start changing your behavior, and you got to start changing it now. And we got to start sending a message as players that we're going to gravitate towards the pools where the CAW teams are managed. And right now that means NYRA primarily. They're trying to do what they can, at least something, to manage the teams in all the pools. You may not be a big fan of NYRA, but when it gets to Saratoga, that's as good a racing as you'll find anywhere in the country. All of us should be playing Saratoga. We ought to give them a record handle this year. They'll have the best product, and they'll have the most player-friendly wagering environment. And if they're down in handle because the CAW teams aren't playing them as much and the players haven't responded by filling that gap, it's shame on us, and we get what we deserve. And even if you do play at some of the tracks that aren't managing the teams in every pool, some are doing a little bit, like Del Mar and the Wynn pool. And, some of these more player-friendly wagers with high minimums and low takeout, play those. Get out of the pools that were made for the CAWs. Stop, getting massacred. Unless you're just foolish or stubborn or a masochist, you got to change your behavior. And don't continue to play at these tracks that just kind of give you the finger and let the CAWs run wild. Stop getting massacred in those pools. And you do have a choice. And if you don't change now, then the game's just going to continue to deteriorate. And on a regular basis, we're all going to get T.O. Elvis. I came up with a new verb. I'm going to call it, you get T.O. Elvis when the teams, bet a horse like crazy down at the end. So I'll stop my rant again. I'm going to probably do this weekly because I really think it's important. If we don't start changing collectively as players, we're going to get exactly what we've got and what we deserve. All right.
It's a good rant. It's a worthwhile rant.
Okay. So are you with me? Do you agree
absolutely.
with me?
Yeah, you don't want to be just funding the CAWs. Hobbies are supposed to be fun, right? And if you're just getting your butt kicked betting in the pools that are just way, way against you, it's not going to be fun for very long.
No, and it's not. And before people said, well, I'm just going to walk away. Well, you don't have to walk away. There are some choices that are maybe not perfect, but they're playable, and if we don't start choosing to play in those pools and shifting our play from the ones that aren't playable, then, nothing's going to change. And you can complain all you want when we get T.O. Elvis, but we deserve it. If we're playing in those pools, knowing it's going to happen, when it happens, it's kind of stupid to complain about it. What do you expect? So, all right. So let's hope we don't get T.O. Elvis, although I think we might in its next race. We'll talk about it. It's the Laurel 9th race. We're going to go through races 9 through 13, all stakes races, ending with the Preakness. The Preakness isn't the last race of the day; it's second to last. But there's a pick 5 that ends with the Preakness, so we'll be covering all those races. And it is the 12% low takeout. So I don't recommend people play pick 5s, but I might even offer up a real inexpensive pick 5 ticket just so you can have a betting interest, hopefully, in the races, and have maybe a chance of cashing the pick 5 if you use some of my opinions combined with your own. But we started off with the 9th. It's an 8 furlong, and all the lead-up races that we're going to talk about to the Preakness are all on the turf, which I just haven't ever seen that. Usually they like to intersperse dirt and turf races to kind of keep the turf course pristine. But the weather's good. The turf course ought to be in good shape, and hopefully we'll have some good turf racing. And it starts off with an 8 furlong turf race, the James Murphy Stakes for 3-year-olds. And in this race, it looks like the favorites are probably the 5 Proton, the Graham Motion horse, and the 6 Turf Star, both Graham Motion horses. Those horses are 9-5 and 5-2. It's a 8-horse field, so it's not wide open. But it's probably a race that maybe it could chalk out. What are you thinking? You like the chalk, or are you looking elsewhere in this one?
Of the 2 chalks, I much prefer the 5 Proton. Just on speed figures, I think he's a little bit faster. He hasn't really caught a firm track in his 2 starts this year. Both have been labeled as good on the Timeform US course condition ratings. They would tend to match the good ratings. So I look for him to bounce back a little bit and have some improvement in him. The 6 Turf Star, I mean, look, he could be a contender. He hasn't been very good this year, but most importantly to me is he hasn't taken a step forward at all from his 2-year-old numbers. He just keeps running kind of the same races. And that applies to the 4-horse Atfield as well. He had won a stakes race at Aqueduct in his last race. As a 2-year-old, he's come back. He hasn't shown much. He hasn't improved his fig. So I tend to be against those kind of horses. Proton, I don't have any real knocks. I expect a good race from him. But the horse I'm going to lead to is the horse drawn on the inside. My favorite bird. He's 10-1 on the morning line. I'll be shocked if he goes off 10-1 just because he's being ridden by Flavien Prat. I think he's going to take more money than that. He gets a good post position. He is a horse who seems to be improving a little bit every single time out, and he had a pretty tough trip last time as well. So he's a horse I think might be overlooked, but not as much as that 10-1 line would indicate.
Yeah, I mean, he gets the rail on Pratt, and he's a horse that likes to be forward. And like you said, he had some trouble at the start in his last race and had some trouble late. So you would think this time they're going to try to get him out and forward, and Pratt's, pretty good at working a trip. So big rider upgrade there. Like you said, probably won't get to 10-1. But there's a lot to like there. I think you're right. Just given that the post and rider is probably worth a couple of links just alone, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a major rider upgrade. No offense to the prior rider, but he's a Florida rider that is okay. He's not a bad rider, but he's not Flavien Prat.
No. And trips are really important in these kind of races. All right, well, I like a completely different horse. I don't just like it. I really think this horse is a standout. And that's the 3-horse Zinal. He only has 1 start. And that was a dirt. He debuted on the dirt in a route at Santa Anita, and he got bet some. He wasn't the favorite, but he came into the race off some good workouts, and he ran a pretty good race. He got away a little bit slow, and then they kind of kept him parked out wide, out of trouble. And he just kind of chased the leaders around. He didn't really cut into the lead, but he didn't really give up any ground. He finished up fine. The number came back fast. It came back. And on Timeform and Beyer, I think his dirt number was faster than anything. Any of these horses have run, and that was on his debut on the dirt. So right away, he looked like a horse that would improve his next time out. That was a good educational experience. He probably got some fitness out of it. So if they ran him back on the dirt, he'd probably be one of the favorites, and probably make a good account of himself, good chance of winning. What makes it so interesting though is he's really bred for the turf. His dam, Theodora B, was just a turf router, a really nice one. Graded stakes winner, won $600,000. His full brother was not a great horse, but it was definitely a turf router. That's pretty much all it did. And now he's the second foal. So you would think this horse should improve off the turf on the turf for sure. And what's interesting is the barn likes to do this. They do really well when the second start is the first turf race. They go first time turf and their second start routing, and really good ROI, like over $3 ROI and 25% win percentage. So, you could almost say that first race was probably just a prep, and they run him back on the turf. He's going to run really well. But what's interesting, they don't run him back in a maiden race on the turf at Santa Anita. They did work him a couple times after that. One of those was with his normal workmate, who's a horse that just broke its maiden on the turf, and he consistently outworks that one. The interesting thing was his last work, but at Santa Anita was against a horse named Hiding in Honduras. I love that name because I'm a Warren Zevon fan. But that horse is a grade 2 winner on the turf. He's an older horse, and he ran after that workout in which Zinal soundly outworked him, especially at the end part of the work, where it really matters. And that he came back and ran fourth, beating 2 lengths in a grade 2 on the turf a week after the work. But they didn't come back. You expect to see Zinal on that at Santa Anita. They didn't. Instead, they shipped him to Keeneland. They worked him a couple times there again with his normal workmate. You'd think, well, they were going to put him in a maiden race at Churchill or something. But no, he pops up in a stakes race at Laurel off of that one maiden race, 4th by 3. And, that kind of spotting, that aggressive spotting is super positive to me. They had a lot of options with this horse, and they chose this spot. I'm hoping he actually runs. You never know. Maybe he gets scratched or something. Maybe they didn't ship him or whatever. I don't know. But if he runs, I think he's a standout. I think he will just dominate this field. I am a little bit disappointed IRAD jumps on, which is probably a positive in terms of his chance of winning, but it'll be a negative in that have to pay that IRAD tax. But I think this horse is a standout. He's going to be a stone cold single for me on any horizontal plays, and he'll be on top if I play any verticals. I'm just worried about the price. I don't think they're going to get to 6-1. This is a horse I think could get T.O. Elvis, just like I was worried about the price on the Japanese horse I loved on Derby Day. But I'm very confident this horse is going to run well. And I'm going to be looking to get creative on how I bet him if I have to. I'll be paying real close attention to everything I can to get a sense for how he's going to get bet. But I love him in this race. I love him in this spot.
Yeah, there's definitely some good signs. Jonathan Thomas doesn't really do very well first out. I'm sure that's probably by design. He jumps way up second out, as you said. He's certainly a horse I gave a long look. And if I did play a pick 5, I would use him on my tickets. I'm far from a breeding expert. I actually had in my notes I was going to ask my buddy David Aragona about this horse, but you laid it out pretty well. So he's certainly got a chance. I don't think he was well meant, and the fact he went off 7-2 in what was a really strong maiden field tells me this horse has plenty of talent.
Yeah, and he did run pretty well there. I have a feeling David would like this horse too. It's the kind of horse he would like, I think. But you can go ahead and see if you find anything out. Let me know. But yeah, I think there's certainly. I would be shocked if this horse isn't better on the turf. And he's already fast enough on the dirt to win this race. So if he improves off that, and the fact they spotted him where they did seems to think they've got to be pretty high on him. And they got IRAD to ride. I'm hoping, at first glance, it's kind of horse you just skip over. But it's, when you dig deeper, there's a lot to like. So I'm just not sure what the price will end up being. That's all about the price for me on that one.
Yeah, and the thing with him is, he doesn't have experience. It's first turf, so we talk about betting smart. If this horse is 5-2, I assume you're not interested, or,
not in the win pool. Yeah.
Not in the win pool. Set the price for you by any means, but it's where you got to use some common sense. He does have some obstacles to overcome, but there's definitely things to like. So, we talk about it. and I know you don't do this, just for people listening, don't fall in love with a horse. Fall in love with the price and the horse.
Yeah, and you can get creative on how you bet him. Maybe he's going to
Yes.
get bet in the win pool, but Tio Elvis went off at 6-1, and I got 20-1 on him in the double.
Yeah.
And I was planning to bet him to win, but I called an audible, and it really paid off. And so you gotta pay attention nowadays, or you get Tio Elvis in the win pool. I did get Tio Elvis in the double from Tio Elvis into rhetorical, so that cost me a pretty good amount of money, but I made up for it on the front end. All right. Is anything else on that race? So I love Zanol. I think he's a standout. You're kind of Proton, but of the favorites.
No, my favorite
bird is the
would
play.
be my top pick, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think Proton's going to offer any value, but if I were playing a pick 5, he would be the favorite I would use.
What price do you think you'll get on my favorite bird? He's 10-1 in the morning line. Doesn't seem likely.
No, I would maybe 6-1. I mean, like you said, I think the 3 is going to take a little bit of money. I think Proton and Turf Star will take some money. So I don't think it'll be 10-1 just because of the rider. But otherwise, he's a little lacking in the speed figures compared to some others in here. So, I could see him being 6-1, maybe even 8-1.
So 6-1, is that playable price for you?
Yeah, 6 will be about my limit for him. Anything below that, I'm not interested in anymore.
Yeah, I think he'll get 6-1. I don't think he'll get much above that, but I think that might be about the floor on that one.
Yeah, my point with him was he's 10-1 morning line. He's not that kind of 10-1 that's going to drift up to 15-1. It's just not going to happen.
No. If he does, jump on it, right? But unless Zanol goes off at even money, then you'll know I was right about his chances of winning probably, but he's certainly not going to be playable in the win pool. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if he takes money. I'll be shocked if he's off at 6-1. That would shock me. I would love it. But I'm hoping I can get 6-1 in some of the other pools on him. That's going to be my goal. All right. Let's move on to the next race. It's 9 furlongs on the turf for older horses at the dinner party stakes. They run this every year on the card. And here we have kind of 3 favorites, 2. That's 6 Dresden Row at 7-5, 3 Cruise and Nile 9-5, and then probably the other horse will take money would be Fort Washington, the 4 horse at 7-2. What do you think of those 3? Is the winner coming out of one of those? Or somebody else you like in here? It's a relatively small field, not real deep for a turf route, so.
Yeah, I hate to be the boring guy on this one, but I couldn't really get past those 3. Now, I do have a preference among those 3, and it would probably be Fort Washington. I just think he's going to offer a lot more value than the other 2. Dresden Row, I don't have any knocks on him. Cruise the Nile, I probably would not use him. He's taken a pretty big step up in class from just a listed stake at Laurel, where he's faced pretty overmatched competition the last couple. Didn't run particularly fast. Whereas Fort Washington, he's a 3-time graded stakes winner, and including the Arlington Million, which is a grade 1. I'll put air quotes around that. I know it wasn't the strongest Arlington Million ever that we've seen, but he's a pretty good horse. He hasn't quite been up to his best, but he's a horse that usually takes him a little while to get going. He doesn't come off the bench just firing his best races right away. So I think he's going to run well in here. And Dresden Row's a horse who's just spent a whole bunch of his career on the synthetic course at Woodbine. But when you look close, his 3 turf races have all been good. And now that he's changed barns, I think he's run 4 times on turf. He changed barns. He went to Todd Pletcher. He beat a really solid field at Keeneland, including Integration, who finished 3rd. He's already come back to win a nice allowance race. It was part of a slow pace, but I really like the way he finished. And what's unusual about the way he finished is he was really pulling away from that field, which when the pace is slow, you usually see a bunched up finish. Now, I'm not breaking any ground here. He's 7-5 on the morning line, but you don't have to beat every favorite. And I just think him and Fort Washington really stand out over the rest of the group.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I kind of agree with everything you said. I will say Fort Washington won this race last year. And,
At
the smaller,
Pimlico, though.
yeah, that was at Pimlico. But I mean, and the smaller field, he's kind of trip dependent. I think the smaller field will help him. He won't have as much traffic or to navigate. So I think that helps him some in here. So I'm kind of with you. I would probably lean with Fort Washington over Dresden Row and Cruise the Nile third. And I don't really like anything outside those horses. So anything else on this race?
No. I think after the first one, we probably need a fast one. But no, I
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
make a case
yeah.
for other horses. But I guess the 7, maybe you could have an outside shot for. He had run some big races at Saratoga back in 2025, but he just hasn't been very good at all this year. So I would really have to make just a leap of faith that he's going to be a lot better third off the layoff. And watching the replays, just nothing struck me as he's the same horse. He's an 8-year-old, so it wouldn't be surprising if he never reaches those races he ran before. And they also came at much longer distances.
Yeah, he is the one that could break things up. I will, in his defense, say, he maybe just doesn't like Gulfstream. He didn't run very well at Gulfstream last year either. And one of those races at Gulfstream had a really slow pace, and it was off the layoff. So I don't know. I think he may not be as bad a form as you do think he is. I don't think he's good enough to win, but he might be the one horse that could maybe break up those 3, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. We go to the next race, the 11th. This is 8.5 furlongs on the turf for older fillies and mares, the Gallorette. Now, this one does look more like sort of the wide open turf route. You can make a case for any of them. Their sort of mild favorites are the Chad horses, Child of the Moon at 5-2, and Accent at 3-1. Are you leaning that way? Is there somebody else you like in here? What are you thinking about this race?
Now, I'm going to try to beat him. I mean, if I was playing pick fives, I'd use a couple other horses. I probably won't play pick fives, to be honest. I know we've talked about that. I'm not a big horizontal guy, but I like the 2-horse Rebel Tagaya. Last time was one of those weird turf races where it was just gapped out the whole way. The pace was fast, and he was still coming at the end. I really like what I saw. And when I look at I know that's why you say they. I gotta get used to that. But the Gallorette I know is for fillies and mares. But when I look at the Timeform US pace projector, she's shown right in the front. It's a race that's tabbed as having a slow pace, meaning there's not a whole lot of speed signed on. And I just hate the trip she had last time. I call it the chasing trip when you're chasing a speed horse who's running all clear by themselves. I can't remember. I think that horse actually hung on the win that day at a big price. And I just thought she ran fine. She got passed by a deep closer late, but she hung tough all the way to the end. And I just think she's going to get a much better trip this time. She's just a 5-year-old. She's pretty lately raced, especially of late. She raced more over in Europe. But I think it's a good sign that she's running back again this quick after having just one race last year and then another big gap to this year and coming back twice in a month. I think that's points to a horse that's probably doing very well, is going to get a good trip. And I think she's going to be a price with the 2 Chad Browns in here. I mean, she's 6-1 morning line. I think she'll be at least that. And I think she's going to give a really good account of herself.
Yeah, I think the biggest plus for her is she's come to the United States and she hasn't been able to put 2 races in a grouping. I mean, she came over, ran once at Gulfstream, went on the bench for 8 months. Ran at Monmouth, went on the bench for 8 months. And she ran at Laurel, but now she's coming back, like you said, 3 or 4 weeks later. Finally, she's got a race under her belt, and maybe needed that tightener. She probably got a lot out of that. And, this is where you'd expect to see some improvement. She wasn't a bad horse in Europe, so I kind of like, and she gets a good post and a good rider. And a good trainer.
Thrown in a work in between, which is a really good sign for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get that. I could see that. you can make a case for that one. I think I can make a case for all of them. This is the race that really, if I'm going to play picks, I like the races surrounding this, but I just don't like this race that much. So I'm not sure how I could play this. Usually when it's like this, where they're tepid favorites that I think are probably a little better than the field, I can go either one or two ways, play a long shot or two and take a chance that way, or play the favorites and, just take it that way, because they're not going to be hammered or anything in the picks anyway. I wouldn't be betting them to win or anything like that. But for me, Austere and the 5 horse and the 7 Child of the Moon, they look a little better than these other horses. And they both had excuses in their last race. Austere, I thought, was, kind of ended up on the lead on the rail. That's not her style. And I think the rail was not the place to be that day on the turf course at Keeneland. And she still held on pretty well. I think she probably got a lot out of that race and should improve a lot second off the layoff, and probably would love to have a target like Rebalta Gaia to sit off of. That's more of her style. And she will be forward, but she doesn't need the lead and probably doesn't want to be there. So I think she could run well. And Child of the Moon, broke through the gate before the race, which is always a bad sign. That race, she's still putting a little bit of movement. I'm always willing to forgive them when they do that. And she has some really good races. So I might play Austere or maybe Child of the Moon if I play the picks. Or I could reverse it and go with horses like Rebalta Gaia and a few other long shots. But I don't like to spread a whole lot, so I got to either be tight with long shots or tight with favorites, and I haven't decided which way I'm going to go. But I don't really like this race in terms of betting the race itself. There's nothing in here I'm excited about betting. I kind of like your horse Rebalta Gaia, but at 6 or 8 to 1, that's kind of fair value to me. Not anything I'd really want to bet. There's really no horse in here that I think was going to be a price that I'd want to bet to win.
Yeah, if you ask me who I thought the most likely winner is, it's probably Child of the Moon. I'm like you. I drew a line right through that last race, especially. It's not like she ran off, but they did have to reload her. So never a fan of that. Horses almost never ran well. My one concern with her is the pace, the projected pace on Timeform US. She's shown last in the field. So that could be a problem for her because she doesn't have a lot of speed. I don't like your horse Austere at all. If I was going to toss one horse, it would be her. She's just a horse who, as I look through her PPs, she runs her best every time she comes off a break, including her first time start. And then she just seems to tail off. And I'm wondering if last time was her best. Maybe she had an excuse and she'll get better, but she's just a horse who seems to run well fresh, and maybe last time was the time.
Yeah, that's a good thing. At a short price, I don't love her for sure. Yeah, I would never bet her to win.
Yeah, it's not a great betting race, honestly. It's one, like you said, if I'm playing a pick 5, you have to do something, but unless I was playing a horizontal and the horse I like goes off at longer odds, I would just as soon watch this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. A lot of times people say, wide open races are good betting races, but for me, unless there's a short price favorite in that kind of race, or there's a long shot I really like that I think's better than the rest, I don't like them because I have no way. I don't know how to bet them. You don't get a lot of value out of fading the favorite who's 3 to 1. And you don't, a horse that's you don't like that much more than the other horses. Maybe it's 10 or 15 to 1, but it's got a 10% chance of winning. It's just they're not good betting races in my mind. And a lot of times people talk about them that way, but I don't agree. I got to have an opinion, either against a heavily bet favorite or have a price horse I really like.
I just had this discussion with a friend of mine after we finished playing pickleball, and he's a big horse racing guy, and he was talking about how the Preakness is wide open. Well, I hadn't looked at the PPs yet, and the first thing I said to him was, I hate when people say the race is wide open, because it usually means it's just there's very little value, is what I usually find in that case. Now, I'm not saying that about the Preakness. When I looked at it, I didn't see it that way at all, but Yeah, just an interesting way to look at them. I think we're on the same page. When
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
whole bunch of horses that can win, it's very hard to win as a bettor. You have to get the one horse right. So if you
yeah,
don't love a horse, it's hard for me to love those kind of races.
yeah. Unless there's one of those price horses that you love, then you can play it, certainly, right? But if
Yeah.
it's not, and the favorites, 5-2 or 3-1, there's just really not a lot of value in those races because being the favorite doesn't buy you that much, and the chances of picking a winner and betting on it, you don't. Why would you do that if you don't love the horse and it only got a 10% chance to win? So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, the horse you
So
mentioned, Austere, I don't like her, but what does tossing her out really get me? I'm still stuck with a race where if I don't love a horse, I got 5 or 6 horses that can win.
yeah, yeah, right. Or even if you toss Child of the Moon because of the pace, it's not like the horse is 4-5, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
it's not buying you that much. You still got 7 other horses in the race that all could win. So
Yep. And like I say, unless you're playing the horizontals, you don't have to play every race.
that's right. And this one might be the one that would keep me from playing like the pick 5. All right, so let's move on now to the next race. This is 5.5 furlongs on the turf, a turf sprint. The listeners know I like these turf sprints. I usually can find some value in them. This is the Jim McKay, the famous Wild World of Sports Jim McKay. He was a big racing guy. They've got this race named after him for older horses on the turf. This is another one that's really wide open from a morning line perspective. There's not going to be a heavy favorite. The 4 Chasing Liberty, 3-1 on the morning line. The 1 Run Curtis Run, 4-1 tepid favorites. What are you thinking in here?
So this is the kind of, I really like speed figures and turf sprints. I think they more often than not will tell you who's going to run well in those. So for this one, it looks like a big field, but the more I looked at it, it was like there's only so many horses that can actually run fast in here. I thought there was some pretty easy tosses. And the 3 horses I was left with, none of them are the favorites. I like the 2-horse Determined Kingdom. I would say he's probably my top pick in here. He had a rough trip coming back from a 6-month layoff last time. He drew the 11 post, which is pretty tough in these turf races at Laurel. One thing we haven't talked about is they do use 2 courses at Laurel. It's only 1 course, but it's gigantically wide, and they put a rail up in the middle somewhere. It's hard to tell from the PPs. Probably if you look at Equibase, you can see what courses are going to be run on. They do play a little bit differently, but for the 5.5 furlongs, the 11 post is just not a good place to be. So I'm willing to excuse that race for Determined Kingdom. I think he's going to get a great trip in here behind some speed with Jose Ortiz. And if he runs back to any of his past races, he's a strong contender. The horse just to his outside is another one I was a little bit interested in, the 3 Jean Valjean. Definitely has the figures to do it. My one concern is I think there's going to be some other pressure in here. I don't see this horse does his best when he's right on the front. His best figures come when he gets a clear lead. Not sure that's going to happen. He'd be a horse I'd consider using, but I wouldn't make him my top pick for that reason. He does get Flavien Prat, though, something you have to take note of. He probably won't be 5-1 because he's always going to take money. That was part of me leaning towards the 2 as well. The other horse I had an interest in here was the 11, had to have him. Now, I know it might seem a little funny. I said the 11's kind of a death sentence in these sprints, but he is kind of a deep closer in these races, so post doesn't really matter. What does matter is he's going to have to work out a trip and hope to get a little more pace than what the pace projector shows, but I think he's going to run well. He came out of that same race, had arguably a tougher trip than the 2 Determined Kingdom. But the problem with horses like him is it's always possible they're going to have a tough trip when you're trying to close in a 11 horse field turf sprint. So I think he's going to have a chance. I would definitely play him in exotics, and I would probably box those 3, maybe not box, but I would play those 3 in exactas and varying combos.
Yeah, we kind of see this race similarly. I agree with you that, there's 4 or 5 of them in here you can kind of just toss. Um, and the uh, the Determined Kingdom, he's kind of a machine. I mean, he runs his speed figure. He's probably a good for a speed figure maker. He his last 4 races last year were like 115, 116, 115, 113. He's always up forward, runs his race, doesn't win a lot, but he runs, like you say, he had an excuse off the layoff. He probably needed that race anyway. A lot of these horses are coming out of that same race. Um, so yeah, I could see that, with that good post, good rider, he could get that like perfect, uh, just off the pocket trip inside out, gets the first run on the leaders and runs them down. So I'm kind of with you there. I'm a lot higher on Jean Valjean, the 3 horse, than you. To me, since they moved him to the turf, he's been pretty brilliant. I mean, he'd been a dirt horse all his life, and then put him on the turf and he just turned into a monster. He reeled off 3 easy wins, including even on a yielding course. And they tried him on the dirt again. That didn't work out so well. And then his next race on the turf, he just lost all chance at the start that day. He got Determined Kingdom won that race, but he had no chance at the start. He came back around and ran another really good race on the turf. He did get beat, but just barely. And he did a lot of dirty work in that race. And it was 6 furlongs in the fall at Aqueduct. So I thought that was a big effort. And then he came back, and I thought his comeback effort was really good too. Again, he had to do a lot of the work. He didn't quit until the very end, and that was off the layoff. And this barn is much better. We're running him into shape. They ran him back, and he won impressively. They're coming back again on fairly short rest, but this barn does that a lot with success. This horse, they're really good second, even better third off the layoff. And he's shown he does not have to be on the lead to win. He's been pressed before and run well. And in the last race, he had a very fast horse that he just kind of sat just off of and then, went past. So I think, and I just do think he's just the best of the speed. I don't think there's maybe one horse in here I think that could possibly go with him. That's 4 Heart, but he wasn't able to keep up with him last time, and he's not as good as he used to be. So even if he does put a little pressure on him, I think he'll be able to kick away from him early. So I really like Jean Valjean a lot. So I'm heavily on the 3. I am a little worried that with Pratt, he's going to get bet. So 5-1 probably won't happen. But I think I don't know. I think he kind of stands out in here myself. I think he's by far the most likely winner.
Yeah, my only knock on him is the price. I won't be surprised if he's the favorite at all in this field.
Yeah.
I don't even know who makes the morning line in Maryland, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions at a thankless job that the morning line is. But looking at these, I mean, Chasing Liberty just kind of got a suck up second in that same race that a lot of these have run in. He just kind of had the great trip that day, picking up pieces. When you look at the PPs, I don't see any way this horse would be favored over the 3.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. So again, this one I may have to get creative. But I think he kind of stands out. And that's the most likely winner. And he, maybe is the favorite. If he's not the favorite, he's probably playable. If they bet him down to 2-1, then he's not a win bet. But I think he kind of stands out. I had to have him more as a clunk up underneath type because of his running style. I don't think this race going to fall apart or anything like that. So I'm with you on all 3 of those horses. The only other horse I would mention that you haven't is Izzy Vunga Vunga, the 7. He's probably the classiest horse in here, and he runs well off the layoff, and Graham Motion's pretty good off the layoff, coming off the Fair Hill Training Center. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him run well and he'll be forward. But he's one that likes to sit off, close but off the lead, and then make a move. So he's the other one. Not sure how he'll get bet either. It seems like he's not going to be 10-1. I don't think he's ever been 10-1. I don't think he was 10-1 in the Breeders' Cup. So I don't. Oh no, I guess he was. He was high. It was a big price in Breeders' Cup, but outside of that race, he's never been anything close to 10-1. So that price again is an issue there. But to me, he seems as likely. After Jean Valjean, Izzy Vunga Vunga seems as likely to win as any of them. Determined Kingdom, he's not a win machine, but he'll probably hit the board and he may win. He's going to get a good trip probably. But I think outside of those horses, we didn't mention Outlaw Kid, but he won that kind of prep for this. But he picks up weight, he's spotting weight, and he's not very consistent. He's not faster than these horses. And I have a feeling he'll get bet down. He's coming out of winning the prep for this race. I don't know why, he wouldn't be one of the favorites. But we'll see. So I kind of agree. This race isn't as wide open as a lot of turf sprints. I think Jean Valjean is kind of a standout, but the price is going to be the issue with him. Anything else on that one?
No, that's about it. Let's get to the big dance.
The big one, the Preakness Stakes, going mile and 3/16 at Laurel. The first time it's ever been held at Laurel. They have two wires, but they use the first wire a lot, except for in the one-turn miles. The stretch is shorter than it is at Pimlico, a lot shorter than like Fairgrounds or Churchill, but it's just as long as most 1 mile circumference stretch runs are. So, I think it maybe gives the front runners a little bit more of a chance than it would at Pimlico, although Pimlico is always a speed favoring track. But I don't think it's a big issue. I think the fact that it is they're using that line and it's a 1.8 track. There's a decent run to the first turn. In this big field, that could be more of a factor than the stretch run. So, but what are you thinking here? Again, this is one of these races where you don't have a favorite, a clear favorite. The morning line favorite's Iron Honor. I'm guessing from everything I hear, the favorite's probably going to either be Incredibolt or Taj Mahal. What are you thinking about the prices, likely prices, and who are you liking in here?
Yeah, so as I was looking at this race, I really narrowed it down. I don't know if you want to say narrowed, because I came up with 4 horses that can win, which, in a 14-horse field, I think that's narrowing it down pretty good. And the one thing I like about it is the 2 horses you mentioned are not among those 4 horses for me. I don't like Taj Mahal at all. He hasn't been training very well. Nothing about this horse screams he wants a 1 3/16 to me. I'm just not interested in him. I know he's the local horse. It's Brittany Russell, Sheldon Russell. I just watch this horse's races and I'm like, I know this probably isn't the best grade 1 we're ever going to see, but he just doesn't look like that kind of horse to me. He hasn't run very fast yet either, and that's really the biggest knock I have. A horse who's winning a race by 8 lengths against overmatched competition. I've been sucked into these horses over the years, but those years have been a while because I've learned better not to take a horse like this. He's probably going to have to run in the, at least a 115, which he hasn't come close to, despite going wire to wire on fairly clear leads the last couple times. So I'm not interested in him at all. Incredibolt's a horse that maybe I'm a little biased because I just didn't like him at all heading into the Derby. I know he wasn't on the rail, but he gives me the impression of it was the kind of trip like a harness horse gets that sits third on the rail and just kind of runs a suck up number without ever really making any moves or doing anything at all in the race. I know he had a little traffic in the stretch, but it was pretty minor compared to most of the field. So I just think that's a phony race. People say he got beat 4 lengths in the Kentucky Derby, to which I would say at no point did he ever look like he was going to hit the trifecta. So I tend to discount horses like that.
All right. So you don't, and so you don't like Taj Mahal. You don't like Incredible. They might be the top two betting choices. Who do you like?
So I'll start. I'll just give you the four who I consider could win this race. The first one is Ocelli. Came in third in the Derby. It kind of looks like that's a race out of nowhere. He jumped up on Timeform US to get a 115 speed figure. His previous high had been a 101 when he lost to Incredible. What I find interesting about this horse is they took the blinkers off for the Wood, and I think he's a new horse since that day. Everybody has the Wood Memorial as a slow race. The more I look at that race, it's a race I think most people, including myself, probably got the speed figure wrong. I was very hesitant at the time when I made that speed figure because it just didn't make sense with all the horses regressing. But the Gazelle was run right before it at the same exact distance. And, it was hard to be too lenient. But there was some rain that day. It started late in the card. It's hard to get a feel when you're watching these races on replay, just how much the weather is affecting things. But if I had it to do over again, and I may eventually go back and adjust that figure, I'm not going to do it now. Everybody's already handicapped this race. But if you're listening to me, you're getting some firsthand knowledge on this. That figure is probably more like a 110 than the 99 that's showing in the PPs right now. So that would show a more logical progression and show, hey, the Derby, maybe it didn't just come out of nowhere in the pace. And maybe he's just a horse who's getting a lot better since the blinkers came off. So I don't want to totally discount him. And I do think there's going to be some pace in this race. And I just don't think that third was a fluke anymore. I think he actually ran very well. Another horse I'm interested in is the 5-horse Talkin'. Now, he's a bit more of a stretch, but he's going to be a big price in this field. And he's a horse that is just a pattern play for me. He's a horse who came back from a layoff. He ran in the Remsen as a 2-year-old. We didn't see him till the Tampa Bay Derby. He hasn't run particularly well in either of his starts, but when you look at the speed figures, he's not that far behind those in the field, some of the higher figures in the field. He's third off the layoff. He's running better. He just passed his 2-year-old top, and I think this horse has another step forward in him. He's not a horse I love, or I would try to tell you is the most likely winner in here, but he's going to be a big price, and I think he's going to run better than most people think. So I'm going to use him in all the spots in the races here. The other horse I think is probably more obvious is Iron Honor. He had run 2 very nice races. I think he was the favorite in the Wood Memorial. If he wasn't the favorite, he was right there as one of them. But he was just tracking a ridiculously fast pace that day. It's the Wood again. He got a 101 for his effort. And just as I said about Ocelli, you could add another 10 points to that. And given the trip that he had, it just makes him a very strong contender in here. Now, he's the morning line favorite, so there's no big surprises. We know that Chad Brown knows how to get a horse ready for the Preakness. He's done it a few times in the past. I remember I was a big fan of early voting that day, and he didn't let me down. I didn't have the one before that, whose name is escaping me. Cloud Computing. Yeah. Everybody and their brother loved him except for me, and I was the wrong one that day. But I think Iron Honor has a very big shot in here. I just think that was his first time around 2 turns. He got a little bit close to what was a supersonic pace and had some trouble as well. He was wide around the turn during that very fast early pace, wide around the first turn, which is just the worst trip of all if you're
and got bumped out on that turn. It wasn't just he went wide; he got banged and kind of forced out, which kind of he pretty much lost all chance in that first turn. I thought, yeah,
and he really didn't run bad. I mean, he only wound up getting beat 4 lengths. It's just a matter of, was that race really as slow as people think it was? And I'm really coming around to the fact I don't think it was. And the other horse is the horse right to his outside, coming out of that very same race, Napoleon Solo, who was actually only beaten 2 lengths. Now, he didn't really have any trouble other than he was being pressed through a supersonic pace. And this is the one horse I'm not a huge workout guy, but he has just been working lights out. If a guy like me can see how good he's working out, at least I think he is. I think he's very dangerous to wire this field. I think he's probably sitting on a good race. We already saw what he can do if he's loose on the lead in the Champagne. Ran a monstrous 121 Timeform US speed figure. He's third off the layoff with some excuses last time. So he obviously, I think, is going to run much better than those 2 105s we've seen in his 2 races thus far as a 3-year-old. If I had to make a top pick, it would probably be him.
So you're thinking that Wood Memorial everybody's been dissing might be the key race in here, and that maybe you got a couple of horses that were compromised by the pace and trip, and you've got the horse who kind of woke up with the change in equipment, and those are the 3 horses to beat in here. So it's kind of from your perspective, it sounds like.
Yeah, along with talking. When I look, one of the things I like about Timeform US is you can just go right in the chart and you can see the history of every horse and how they've done running back. And what you can see when you look at that Wood is a lot of horses in there took a step back, but when you look for what they did going forward, you just see a big jump up. Talk to Me Jimmy came back. He had run 100 in the Wood or something like that. He ran a 113, running a good second. Another horse, Steel, had run a 91. He ran a 101 next out, even though he was beaten pretty hard. A horse named Butane, a Bob Baffert horse, improved his figure more than 9 points. So that alone would give me a little bit of pause. Now, Albus won the race, and he just wasn't any good in the Derby, so obviously his figure regressed. But also, I can look at the Gazelle in the race right before that when the rain had also started. And the winner, always a runner, obviously won the Oaks, ran a 9-point higher speed figure. Pashmina was in that same race and matched her speed figure despite running 11th. And Paradise was another horse who ran on Derby weekend, improved her figure 9 points in the 8 bells off of that Gazelle. So it could just be a point where the track really did slow down for those last 2 races. And, it's hard to tell, particularly for 3-year-olds, because you never really know how much they're going to improve from race to race. And I always say the hardest part about making speed figures is projecting improvement, particularly for younger race horses, because most winners in races improve their speed figure. They're not running their last figure over and over again. You pointed out a horse earlier that's really consistent, is a good horse for speed figure makers. You don't get those with 3-year-olds because they're still changing, they're still growing up. So, it's just one of those things with figures. They're not science. I mean, they're a little bit art and a little bit science, and I'm really starting to wonder if the Gazelle and the Wood are probably better races than most of us had them. I don't have access to everybody's speed figures, but I know most of the major ones had the Wood as a very slow race.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody having that anything but slow. A couple of interesting things to point out on that Wood. One was given the pace, the crazy hot pace in the Wood, and what's unique about that is that was the only Derby prep that had a hot pace. The rest all had average or slow paces. So it was the one real testing race. Napoleon Solo actually earned the highest Timeform US adjusted figure in the race, even though he finished 5th, right? Yes. So he got 105. And I would say, watching the race, I agree. He ran the best race. I think that's a legitimate bump up. And if you're right about, being slow, he ran 115, that could have won the Kentucky Derby this year almost. And that was despite setting those crazy fractions on a track that Timeform US has labeled as biased towards closers, right? So not only was he against the flow, he was against the track, and he was fighting all kinds. He missed workouts. He had foot issues his whole 3-year-old year. They just kind of tossed him in that race knowing he was a short horse, and he still, stuck around till the very end. And he was only beaten a length by Ocelli, in that race, who had the perfect setup. So, and after that race, supposedly his foot, they had gotten through his foot problems. They were able to put normal shoes on him. And like you said, his workouts are just, I have not been able to watch them, unfortunately, but they're just crazy fast. It looks like legitimately he was having issues that he's no longer having them. I mean, he worked at 110 flat, 6 furlongs on the training track at Belmont solo. He was Napoleon solo. So he wasn't like getting goosed by a workmate or anything. He did that on his own a week after he had went 111-2 with company. So he's clearly turned a corner, I think. And, he's the one grade 1 winner in the race. He's the one horse that's run a brilliant race before. And he seems to be going into this race, sitting on a monster effort. And you could argue he's run the best race this year in the Wood, that race was probably much better than the result would indicate. It's kind of like Denon Bourbon in the Derby. He finished about the same, 4th or 5th, beating a few lengths, but, he ran a huge race. And that was a horse that wasn't fit, wasn't near 100%. And now he probably is. I think he stands out in here. I really do. And I agree with you on Taj Mahal. That last race, you being a pace guy, he got this incredible breather in the middle of that race, right? He went out fast, but then he got a huge breather and just waited on horses and then took off again. But you don't get that. He's not going to get that kind of trip ever again. And that was on a red-coated track on Timeform US. So to me, that is what Sean Bourne would call a fake fast race. I'm totally with you. And none of his races before that were outstanding. And now he's in a race where, he's in against much tougher company. He's going to be, and I don't know what they're going to try to do with him from the rail. Are they going to try to hook up with Napoleon solo? I wouldn't think so. But, to me, if they do, he has no chance. If they sit off him, I don't think he's going to run past Napoleon solo. So I don't like him either. I'm kind of with you. I agree. Ocelli should be finishing. He seems, to me, I don't know why you would like Incredible over Ocelli. If you watch the Derby, and, I agree that, Incredible was a little closer to the pace, but he was the very back of that first pack. He had a pretty good trip. He was in the clear. Ocelli started moving before he did, so Ocelli made the first move into that high pace, and Ocelli ran right past him. He just went right by him, and he did have trouble, but it was because Renegade was coming up on him, and they were he leaned into him, trying to block him almost, and he couldn't hold him off, but he caused that trouble, and then he was just tired after that, I think. So I agree with you. I don't even know if he really wants the distance. I'm not sure he does. His best race is around one turn. So, and he drew the outside post, and he's not a drop back stone cold closer. So I'm not sure what kind of trip he's going to get. And he's, he was an afterthought entry, and they decided, oh yeah, they saw that nobody was, the field was weak, so hey, why not give it a shot? To me, he's a good bet against. We already talked about Iron Honor, so I'm kind of with you on everything. Although I think I'm higher on Napoleon solo than you are, maybe.
I picked him on front.
Okay, good. So we're on the same page.
He's my top pick. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one horse you did mention that I will toss out is the 7 horse, The Hell We Did. I was really impressed by his race 2 races back at Sunland. I mean, it was pretty impressive. He looked like he had a lot of talent, and he's bred to go longer. I thought he just kind of ended up on the lead in that Lexington. That's really not where he wants to be. And he's kind of between horses, and I just never thought he got comfortable. But he still didn't run too bad. And I think they're going to ride him cold in here, I hope. And I think he could be finishing. And he could be a horse that is at a big price. So that's the other one I would use. I mean, to me, it's going to be Napoleon Solo on top. And I'm going to hope for, like the hell we did, maybe get in there. Ocelli. I'm hoping that they do bet Taj Mahal and Incredible down. And Iron Honor, I agree with you. They've already said they're going to try to rate him. He didn't look like he was real cooperative with the ratings. No. I'm a little nervous about what kind of trip he's going to get, and that they may try to. But he has Pratt, and if he tries to rate him, he doesn't. He's not going to try to strangle him for half a mile before he finally gives in. But I just
they are taking the blinkers off him as well. I don't know how much that's going to help, but it's something that could help.
Yeah, and if they can get him to sit off, then he'll be a major player. If he gets rank, and they try to rate him and he doesn't cooperate, that will kind of hurt his chances. But we'll see. He's got a good rider for sure, and like you said, they're making that change in equipment. And they did say that Chip Honcho was going to they're going to try to get him to sit off as well. So it looks like a really hot pace on paper, but the rest are kind of cheap speed. Of the real speed horses, Iron Honor, they've already said they're going to try to rate him. Chip Honcho, they already said they're going to try to rate him. Taj Mahal is the one horse, I'm not sure what they're going to do with him. But I don't know if, the two of the horses that are legit contenders are going to want to get hooked up in a speed duel. I think one of them will cede the lead. My guess is Paco will be aggressive and go for it. And I think if Napoleon Solo is on the lead, he is going to be hard to run down. I think he's the best horse, and he's sitting on a big race.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. It's funny you mentioned Chip Honcho. I didn't really give him much look at all in here. He's 5-1 morning line. Again, I don't want to harp on morning lines, but there's no way, right? I mean, that horse has got to be way higher than that.
Yeah, I kind of was going to fade him in the Derby, so I don't know why I would like him here. He seems like a distance challenge horse,
Yeah.
Maybe if he can ride him really cold and have some finish, maybe hits the board, but I just don't see him running past good horses, late. And he's certainly not going to go wire to wire in here, and they're not even going to try. So, maybe there's a chance that.
Yeah, they're going to rate speed horses. It's usually a bad sign, in my opinion, because
it just means
that they don't think they can go that far. And
right.
If they are going to go that far, the only way they're going to do it is by going to the front.
Yeah. It usually means that they're going to be cutting back next time out. That's what that usually means.
That's good.
Or, he could be a Iowa Derby, Ohio Derby type horse. Maybe you can get a 1.8 miles with the right company, right? So
yeah.
But probably not. He's probably more of a
Indiana. That's later on.
All right, so we're kind of surprisingly on a race I didn't, think we would be, but we're kind of pretty much exactly on the same page here. Most people,
there's a lot of filler. Let's be honest. It's a 14-horse field. There's a lot of horses in there. If they're anywhere at the finish, then I'm not cashing.
Yeah, you got that crazy Preakness win board, which, it's the only one that's crazier than the Derby is the Preakness. Who knows? Great White could be the 2-1 favorite.
Yeah, let's hope there are sharks in Maryland. I've been to the beach there.
Well, wasn't Jaws filmed? Where was it supposed to be?
It was supposed to be in Massachusetts, I think.
Massachusetts, okay.
I think. I don't remember. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah. Anyway, it's somewhere on the East Coast. Yeah. So anyway, for those, we're probably, some people probably don't even know what Jaws is, but it was a good movie. You should watch it if you haven't seen it before. It's a classic.
No doubt.
All right. So we're both on Napoleon Solo. I'm really cheering for him because I have 40-1 on Napoleon Solo in the Preakness future.
You're not going to get you'll be lucky to get a tenth of that.
20 or 25-1 in Iron Honor I've got as well. I can have 50-1 on the hell we did. So
so the Preakness future thing you wrote about in the book is far from dead.
No, it is. I mean, there's no guarantee. I always hope. I was a little disappointed to see Ocelli and Incredible go, because those two I didn't play, obviously, because the whole idea is you fade the Derby horses. But
Mhm.
I don't. They may win, but I don't think they're the most likely winners. I like my horses that I've got. I think are more likely to win than that. I do have Taj Mahal too. Just that was the other horse I played. So
Well, you got him in the gate, so that's
yeah, and I got all
very
of them at 20 to 1 plus, and they're all going to be probably 5 to 1 or thereabouts. So it's a lot of value. So we'll see how it works out. All right. So what's your big play? What's the horse that you're most interested in playing in the 5 races we talked about?
If I had to pick one, well, it wouldn't be if I had to pick one. The one I would pick is probably Napoleon Solo in the Preakness. I just think he's going to offer some value. I think there's a whole bunch of filler. We know people are going to bet horses that have very little chance. Easy to say. I mean, it's not the Derby where I think all of the horses are at least pretty good. There's some real filler in here that's going to take money, and I think he's got a real shot to be alone on the lead. And I just love the way he's training. And I think he's sitting on probably the best race he's running since the 2-year-old race, obviously. But even if he gets close to that 2-year-old race, he's going to win this race pretty easily.
Yeah, he should gallop, and if he's developed at all, he could crush the field, right? Because this isn't much of a field, unless Taj Mahal is better than we think he is. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. What do you think he'll go off at? He's 8 to 1. What do you think price he's going to go off at? I'm guessing it's between six, probably about 6 to 1 thereabouts.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's going to be very lukewarm favorites. I mean, get a favorite of 9 to 2 in here, probably.
Yeah, it could. Unless
and
they land
I
on
think
Taj
it'll
Mahal.
probably be Iron Honor. I think he will wind up being the favorite just because of the connections. Everybody knows Chad's won a couple Preaknesses with horses like this who didn't run in the Derby. And rightfully so. I mean, the horse has some good races, but I don't think he's going to get much more action than that because there's a lot of different ways you could go in here.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of with you there. Like I said, I've already got a nice score if Napoleon Solo were to win. But I'm probably going to try to play some, vertical plays, and he'll be the key for me in it. And I'm going to fade, Taj Mahal and Incredible, and then try to catch, some of the other horses we talked about, because it is a big field, so you could get some good payouts, right? In those.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Ocelli gets bet. I think he's actually getting overlooked quite a bit from what I've seen. Just because
to
it's
me,
a clunk up, but
yeah,
I think he's better than that. I mean, he wasn't some I mean, yeah, he was way back there, but he moved pretty early. He was only 4 lengths behind, with a quarter mile to go. So
yeah, I think he ran the best of those 3 closers, because they didn't try to save ground with him. He gave up a lot of ground compared to the other two. The other 2 closers, Renegade and Golden Tempo, and he made the first move. And, I think he paid the price for going a little wide, making the first move. I think if he had been more patient and saved a little ground, he might have been able to win the thing. Might have been another rich strike at 70 to 1 kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't, I'd never like those kind of horses unless I'm getting a good price on the dirt, especially on the dirt, but, he could, if Napoleon Solo doesn't run the way I think he is, there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to run down the rest of them in there. Wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yep, I'm with you. And that would be my exacta, really. If I was going to play, my biggest exacta will be those 2. Napoleon over Chile.
Yeah, the hell we did is my big exacta play. I mean, in terms of big price. And I'll probably might even be playing some tries and supers. In this big field, you don't get too many chances at 14 horse fields in U.S. racing. Certainly on the dirt, you don't very often. So if there's a horse I think kind of stands out, and there's some favorites, even if they're not big favorites, they're still probably going to take money. And that's the kind of race where I would like to, try to go for some of the deeper vertical plays. It kind of sets up for it. Yeah, for me, I really like, Zinal, and I spent a lot of time talking about him. I'm a little worried about the price on him. I really like Jean Valjean, but I'm a little bit worried about the price. That's why I might have to get a little creative about how I play this race. And, maybe you're looking for doubles and pick threes into or out of those horses and maybe some verticals.
This last
And then,
note, since you
oh,
said it, the doubles are the pools that the CAWs are avoiding the most.
yeah, especially the
Because
doubles
they don't
into your
like to tip
horse.
their hands.
Right. The doubles into your horse. Yeah.
Yes.
Doubles out, those are tough because, they'll pound those like they pounded. You get T.O. Elvis in the doubles out, but the doubles in, they don't want to tip their hand. And that's how I was able to make a big score on T.O. Elvis was that double end to him. Now the pick threes sometimes get bet because they're hidden. Well, not hidden to everybody, I guess, but for most of us, we don't have visibility into that, what that pick three pool's doing. But yeah,
you can check the will pays, which gives you a small look, and they're pretty good. The problem with pick threes is they're usually not as big a pool, but on these days they're pretty reliable. A
yeah,
lesson I learned from the T.O. Elvis race.
yeah, yeah. So, so I'd probably be looking to play things into him for sure. And same with Jean Valjean. The problem is the race into the Jean Valjean race, that race I have no opinion on. So that kind of makes that tough. But that's the one race that would kind of keep me out of the pick five. But, to me, I really like Napoleon Solo. I really like Jean Valjean. I really like Zinal. That's three races I like in the pick five. And to me, there's only three horses in that Fort Washington. I give a lean to Fort Washington. So even that fourth race, I could definitely play a pick five. It's just that one, other race, that turf race that I'm not sure what I do, but I could play a really tight pick five ticket. And, I'll probably do something. I just haven't decided what. I'm not going to play all or anything like that, but I got to figure out, some way to play that 11th race. But the other races, to me, I really like horses that aren't favorites, but they're probably not long shots either. And I'm not quite sure how they're going to get bet. So that's always a little tricky.
Yeah, the one good thing, I guess it could good and bad, but these fields are reasonable. We don't have 12 to 14 horse fields, which, those things can have boxcar payoffs, but, so does the Powerball.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are finishing up in a big field where people are going to like the spread. And we both have a pretty strong opinion on that. We've narrowed it down pretty well. So, that does make everything a lot more playable. And I too think it's a very playable Preakness race. Plus, I don't have to worry about the win bet, right? I've already got it. I don't care, about the price, and I can focus on, some exotics. And that's where I've been going into the Preakness ever since they started this Preakness future bet. And Ed DeRosa claims it was his idea to start it, so I always have to thank Ed for giving this gift that just keeps on giving. And at some point, it will become more efficient, but it's still fairly inefficient, and there's a lot of bad money in that pool. And I really encourage people to take a look at that. Get my book, Betting on Horses. Go to betwiththebestmedia.com. Read the deep dive on the Preakness future pool. It may pay off again this year. It's certainly. I feel like I've made some good bets based on the what I described in there, but you don't always get the result. But you can make bets like if I can get 40 to 1 on Napoleon Solo, I'm going to make money on that kind of horse long term, right? Even if he doesn't win this race.
Yeah, look, nobody wins every bet, but if you make the vast majority of your bets are good bets, you're going to come out ahead. You never know what's going to happen with any one bet, but if you make enough good bets, good things will happen.
Yeah, and you're looking for this place you can get an edge, and definitely you can still get an edge in that Preakness future pool. It doesn't mean you're always going to cash, but you can always, make a bet that's plus EV bet long term. Problem is they only have that bet once a year, so it's not like you're going to get rich on that. But I've got a pretty good ROI on that bet. Let me just put it that way.
But that kind of thinking can lead you to others. There's always new things coming up, and new pools. Unfortunately, most of them are terrible, like the odds and evens, but every now and then something happens and you can take advantage of it. And being pari-mutuel, it won't last long, but this one seems to have a pretty good shelf life so far.
Yeah, maybe it's just because of the infrequency of it, right? So people's memory isn't long enough. Maybe that's working in its favor. All right. Anything else before we wrap things up?
No, nothing particular. I haven't really looked too much at the black-eyed Susan card. I did look at the Pimlico special. That should be a fun race, but it's another one of those like we talked about. There's 7 horses, and I think probably 6 of them can win. And the other horse is 30-1 on the morning line. So it's just one I'll be watching. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out at Laurel. It's supposed to be there this year and next year. My bet, I'll take the over. I know how a major construction project like this works in Baltimore City, so it could be 2030, but it should be interesting seeing it in Laurel. It's a place I've been to literally hundreds of times in my life, having grown up there and been stationed there during my Air Force time for a couple years. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It's unfortunate they have to limit the attendance for whatever reason. I haven't followed along, but yeah, it's good to see. Always proud of the race being in my home state here, and hope it stays there for a long, long time.
Yeah, and it looks like the weather is going to cooperate, which is not always the case. And especially the turf course at Pimlico just seems like it's always a bog. So we're going to get, the Laurel turf course is better than Pimlico, and it should be in good shape. And there's no weather in the forecast for Friday and Saturday, so that'll be good too. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah,
Let's just hope we don't have a bunch of scratches.
Yeah, the last time I went to Pimlico was the year Exaggerator won, and I was standing in puddles in the grandstand the whole time. So,
well, were you there the year where the power went out?
yes, that was the real quiet year, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the real quiet year.
I don't remember. I just remember one year all the power went out, right? So
yes, that was. Matter of fact, that's the only year I ever went to the Derby as well.
I went to the Derby that year. If it was a real quiet year, I was there for the real quiet.
98, I believe.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I'm almost sure.
Fond memories of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the Preakness with my dad that same year. So,
cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up then. Thank you, Craig, for joining us this week, and thanks to all the listeners. That'll conclude show number 361 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers. That's a wrap.